Twins keep following officer for help. Then something horrible happens. The road was empty. The early morning sun barely stretching across the quiet pavement. Officer Dan Hayes had taken this route 100 times. But something about this shift felt off. It wasn't the stillness. It was the two little figures standing just off the shoulder staring at him. Dan slowed his patrol car. Two black twin girls stood barefoot in the rising light. One wore a faded red dress with bright blue tights and maroon shoes. The other had on muddy, orange overalls with a striped cream-colored shirt underneath. Their ponytails were tied neatly, bouncing slightly in the breeze. They looked about 4 years old, no taller than his kneecap. Dan rolled down his window. "Hey there, are you girls okay?" They didn't answer, just stared silent. Dan stepped out slowly, his officer instincts flickering. "Where are your parents?" he asked gently, crouching to their eye level. The girl in the red dress stepped forward. Her lips quivered like she wanted to say something, but no words came. Instead, she reached out and touched Dan's badge. "Do you need help?" he asked again. Both girls nodded almost in unison. Then they pointed not toward the town, but back down the long stretch of road they'd come from toward the woods. Dan's brows drew together. "Did you come from there?" he asked. The girl in the orange overalls nodded this time. Dan scanned the area. No cars, no adults, just these tiny, quiet twins, eyes wide, holding hands like their lives depended on it. Something was very wrong. "All right," he said softly. "Let's get you somewhere safe." He opened the back door of his patrol car. They hesitated, then climbed in without a word, sitting close enough that their shoulders touched. Dan handed each a small bottle of water from his glove box. Still, not a single word passed their lips. As he drove slowly in the direction they pointed, Dan radioed dispatch. "This is Hayes. I found 2 unattended minors on Route 83. Black twin girls approximately 4 years old. No, adult nearby. I'm taking them back down the road, trying to locate origin point." "Copy that," dispatch replied. "Keep us updated." The road eventually narrowed. On the side, Dan noticed a torn pink ribbon caught on a branch. He stopped the car and got out. "Stay inside, girls. I'll be right back." The wind picked up, rustling the trees. Dan followed the ribbon trail until he found something else. A small stuffed bear with one ear torn lying in the dirt. Then a child's shoe half buried. He turned back to the car, but the girls had gotten out. "No, wait." He rushed over, but they weren't running. They stood still, one pointing again toward the trees. This time Dan saw it too. Barely visible behind a cluster of brush, a small footpath. The red-dressed girl took a step forward. Dan kneeled. "I'm going with you, okay? But you have to stay close." The two nodded. They walked into the woods. Dan in front, flashlight in hand, the girls behind. Branches creaked. Somewhere in the distance, a crow called. Then, barely audible, he heard it. A faint whimper. Dan stopped. "Did you hear that?" The girls clutched each other's hands. Their eyes were filled with fear now, not just silence. He turned, lifted the smaller girl into his arm, and held the other's hand. They moved deeper. After about 5 minutes, Dan spotted it. A dilapidated shack with broken windows and a rusted lock. The sound came again, a cry. Dan's heart pounded. He knelt beside the girls. "I need you to stay right here." "Okay." They didn't nod this time. They just stared. Dan crept toward the shack, peered in the window, and froze. Inside, in a dim light, was a mattress on the floor. Several toys scattered, but also ropes and something that looked like dried food smeared on the walls. Then he saw it. Another child, barely a baby, wrapped in a thin blanket, motionless, crying. Dan grabbed his radio. "Dispatch, I need immediate backup and medical assistance. Possible child endangerment. Sending coordinates now." He turned back. The twins hadn't moved, but they weren't looking at him. They were looking at the baby inside. Tears streamed down the face of the girl in the red dress. Dan's voice cracked. "That's your sibling, isn't it?" The girl nodded just once. The other reached out and touched Dan's hand, and finally she whispered, "Please save her." The sirens grew louder as Officer Dan Hayes stood guard outside the decrepit shack, cradling the frail baby wrapped in an old towel. The baby, no older than 5 or 6 months, had stopped crying, too. Weak for tears now. Her chest rose and fell barely. Her eyes were half closed, fluttering like she was trying to stay in the world. Dan wrapped her tighter in his jacket. The twins sat beside him, silent and solemn, their little bodies leaning into each other. They hadn't let go of each other since he found them. Moments later, 2 patrol cars and an ambulance pulled up along the road, their lights casting red and blue across the woods. EMTs jumped out and rushed to Dan. "She's cold," he said, voice shaking. "She needs heat food now." One of the medics took the baby gently from his arms. Another opened the doors of the ambulance. The older twin tried to follow, but Dan knelt beside her and placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "She'll be okay," he said. "You helped save her." The girl looked up, and for the first time she spoke louder. "She's our baby sister. Her name is Amaya." Dan swallowed a lump in his throat. "How long were you 3 alone?" he asked softly. The other twin in the orange overalls finally said, "Since Mama left." Dan felt his jaw tighten. "LFT when?" "She said she'd come back." "She didn't." Paramedics examined both girls inside the back of the second ambulance. They were dehydrated, bruised, and had minor scratches, but they were safe. While doctors worked, Dan spoke to the detectives now arriving on the scene. "I think this was an abandoned squatter house, but there are signs someone's been using it recently," Dan reported. "We need to search the surrounding area. The mother may still be nearby, or worse, someone else who had them." It didn't take long before one of the search teams found what they feared. Old footprints, empty fast food wrappers, and a stained notebook containing disturbing scribbles, names, and dates. Whoever had been using that shack wasn't just homeless. They were hiding something. Back at the station, Dan refused to go home. He sat with the twins through their medical evaluations, brought them apple juice, and found a stuffed animal from the evidence locker to comfort them. They clutched it together. "Do you know your last name?" he asked gently. The girl in red said Aubrey. "And hers?" he asked, pointing at the other. "Autumn," the other whispered. "But she doesn't like loud noises." Dan smiled softly. "It's okay. No one's going to hurt you now." Later that evening, the social services officer arrived. But when she bent down to greet them, Aubrey clutched Dan's arm. "Can you stay?" she asked. "Don't leave us." Dan looked up at the woman. "Just give me a few more minutes." He knelt eye to eye again with the twins. "Listen, I promise you're going to be taken somewhere safe. They'll help you find a home, okay? You did something really brave. You protected your sister. You found help. That's what heroes do." Autumn reached into her little pocket and pulled out something small. A photo folded and torn. She handed it to him. Dan unfolded it. 3 girls, the twins looking younger, and their baby sister just a newborn in their arms. A woman, early 20s, stood behind them, smiling. It was their mother. Dan sighed. "Where is she?" Aubrey stared at the floor. "A man took her." That sentence hit like a bullet. "What man?" "He used to yell at her. He brought food sometimes. Then he got angry. She told us to run and find a man in a badge." Dan looked at the social worker. "We need an open case, file immediately. These girls are witnesses to something serious. I want protective care, not just placement." 2 days later, Dan visited them again, this time at a temporary shelter. They lit up when he walked in, running to hug his legs. "You came back," Autumn shouted. "Of course." "I did," he said, smiling. "I miss my partners." Then came the moment that changed everything. Dan had filed paperwork, long nights, long hours, late reports, because deep down, he already knew the truth. These girls weren't just a case to him, they were a calling. 6 months later, Dan walked into his living room, where 3 little girls sat on the floor drawing. Aubrey, Autumn, and baby Amaya, now healthy, laughing in her bouncer seat. All of them his daughter's adopted, safe home. He sat down beside them. Aubrey looked up and asked, "Will we ever be scared again?" Dan smiled, pulled them close, and said, "Not while I'm here." If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more emotional, dramatic, and unexpected tales. And let us know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? We love hearing from all of you. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep watching.